This is a game that's a commercial game called Story Cubes that is used to help people write stories and to use certain pictures in order to tell a story. You don't need to buy this commercial game because you can use the simplest thing as cutting out pictures of different objects from newspapers, from magazines, and make cards. It would work just as well with cards. So you can adapt it to what works for you in terms of your budget and the kinds of things that are available. You might even have, if you have a student that likes to draw, he or she might draw a set of pictures and then use those. The idea is with this game, and it can be, I've adapted it to use with my students because I want to make sure that they actually can identify the objects on it since their language is not very developed at this point. So I'm going to use certain pictures that I think are going to work for them and that help increase their vocabulary. So at this particular time, I took these 4 things out of the Story Cube box, and we first worked with each of the pictures, identifying them and making sure that they knew what their use was. So what we have in front of us here is a key, a lock, a telephone, and a flashlight. And I explained to my student that these things needed to be put together into whole sentences that worked to create a story. With this particular student, she has a fair amount of English, but she doesn't have much of a knowledge base of story because she had never been to school. And so here she is as an adult, having never been to school, and has worked with me now to understand what story is, and is now reading stories. But for her to write a story on her own from her imagination is extremely hard to do. So this gives her some place to hang her hat and having some props and using those to create sentences that make sense and hang together to make a story. She was very excited when I took this out. She identified the different objects and then told me a story with using each of these objects. I was the scribe and I wrote it down first in cursive so that we could read it back. I could read it back to her. And then I took it then and put it into printing so that she then could read it back to me. We could look and see if it made sense, and we could do any corrections that we needed to do in terms of tense, what would work better, and used it then as a teaching tool. The good thing about this is that I'm using her words, and oftentimes using a student's own words, it makes their ability to read it back easier for them to do. And then, of course, the words that are new to them become new vocabulary words.